Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello and welcome, my dear students. As you see, chapter number 9. Today we will continue chapter number 9. As you see, 18th century literature, 1700 up to 1800. But before, as usual, we go to chapter number 9, let me remind with you chapter number, also the first sections of chapter number 9, which were talking about the Augustan literatures. If you remember that I gave you Augustan literatures as a style of British literatures, and also I discussed with you the how it produced during the reign of Queen Anne. Also, I told you about that the Augustan literatures we consider as one of the most critical elements of the 18th century, and how it was increasing availability of printing material both for readers also and authors. So I also talk about the all types of literatures which were spread quickly in all directions, and the newspaper which began, and also furthermore the newspaper which were immediately compromised as the political factions created their own newspaper. Also both I talk about the Augustan age, and how it's seen clearly in the poetry of Pope, as a poet also, which who brought a couplet of prefixes in prose. Also, we talk about the how we noted the power of a brace in this age. I mean age of 19. So therefore, I also told you about the Alexander Pope, and how Alexander Pope introduced in English as poet and satirist during the restorations, how he was born. Also, I told about Pope, which suffered from a spinal deformity, which left him displayed and prevented him from ever growing past. And I also gave you the masterpieces of Pope, which means the rape of the lock. Also, the rape of the lock, the first vision, which published in 1718 or 1712. Samuel Johnson's also, or Dr. Johnson. I told you about how he is English writers, and how he made lasting contributions to English literature as a poet or playwright, essayist, moralist, literary critics, biographer, editor, all these as Samuel Johnson's. So everything about the introductions of chapter number 9 I covered with you. And today, as you see, we are going to complete chapter number 9, which talking about this century, 18th century. And let us move here to this slide and see the contents. The first, we will discuss the first sections together. William Black, which 1757 up to 1827. As you see, the second sections will be covered the first English novelist, and the third here Henry Feldings as a novelist in 1770 up to 1754. Finally, the summary of the 18th century in general we will, or I'll discuss with you. So move with me here to see William Black, and as you see here, William Black the man. William Black was born in England on 28th of November 1757, and he died on August 12, 1827. The second is Black was considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, of all English poets and artists. The third is, surprisingly, Black did not attend school. Instead, he was taught at home. Besides this, he also learned a lot by reading the Bible, which he drew influence from his entire life. So, in this slide, if I want to tell you about William Black, you know that we have many things to talk about William Black. William Black, first of all, you have to know that he's a poet, painter, engraver, and visionary. William Black worked to bring about a change both in a social order and also in the minds of men. Though in his lifetime his work was largely neglected or dismissed, he is now considered one of the leading lights of English poetry, and his work has only grown in popularity. I think in 1789 he published his Songs of Innocence, which I'll discuss with you later, and Songs of Experience, the details of his lyrics. But the collection was followed by Songs of Experience also, which containing a profound expressions of adult corruption and repressions. So his long list of work shows relentless or energy and drive. As one of the most complex writers now, it is impossible to summarize his career. So he was a combination of extremes. His visions of civilizations as inevitable chart or contradictory mirrors the political trauma of his era. So therefore, it's only in retrospect that we can begin to appreciate his work and unravel its complex and elusive sources. So this is what can we say about William Black as a man. So let us talk about him in this slice also, that of all romantic poets of the 18th century, now Black is the most independent and the most original. The second is that in his earliest work written when he was scarcely more than a child, he seems to go back to Elizabethan song writers for his models. The work of Black, as you see here, the poetical sketch, published in 1783, is a collection of Black's earliest poetry, much of it written in pied. So it contains much cross and also incoherent word, but also a few lyrics of striking originality. Two later and better known volumes are Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, which reflecting two widely different views of the human soul. As in all his work, there is an abundance of apparently worthless stuff in these songs, but in his language or in the language of miners, it is all paid up, and it shows also gleams of a golden grains that await our sifting, and now and then also we find a nugget of unexpected. So therefore, we can also, or we can add it here, that William Black is one of the most important writers in this age. So his long list of work show how he relentless or energy and drive. So we can say that he is one of also the complex writers known, and it's impossible to summarize his career now. So this is briefly summarizing about William Black. So now let us go to the second slide or sections, which is the first English novelist, meaning of the novel. Before we go to the novelist, which I choose to you, the novel or novelists, let me tell you about the meaning of the novels. The most significant remark made by the ordinary readers concerning a work of fiction takes the form of questions. Is it a good story? Everyone can ask these questions. Is the novel or is it a good story? The second is that for the readers of today is much like the child and the primitive man in this respect, that he must be attracted and held by the story element of a narrative before he learns to appreciate its style or moral significance. The story element is therefore essentially the novel, but where the story originates is impossible to say. So, what is the novel? A novel is a relatively long work of narrative fictions. Again, a novel is a relatively long work of a narrative fictions, typically written in prose and published as a book. The present English word for a long work of a prose fictions derive from the Italian's novella for new or means news, as I told you before in a previous lecture. And also, we consider it as an Italian, which means a short story of something of something new. So, novel, an invented prose or narrative of considerable length and a certain complexity, then deals imaginatively with the human experience, usually through a connected sequence of events involving a group of persons in a specific setting. So, finally, I can say about the novel that within its broad framework, the genre of the novel has encompassed an extensive range of types and styles. So, we have a types of novel. The first type is a picaresque novel, epistolary novel, gothic novel, romantic novel, realistic novel. Also, I can remember that historical novel. So this is some of the type of the novel which you have to keep in mind. Again, the types of the novel is that the first, I can say that a picaresque novel, epistolary novel, gothic novel, romantic novel, realistic novel, historical novel. This is the type of the novel. So let us now talk about the one of the most important novelists in English literature, especially in 19th century, which is that the Henry Felding. Henry Feldings, as you see in his biography, born in 1707 up to 1754, Fielding was the greatest of this new group of the novel writers and one of the most artistic that our literatures has produced. He was born in East Star district in 1707. In contrast with Richardson, he was well educated, having spent several years at the famous Eton School and taken a degree in later at the University of Leiden in 1728. Moreover, he had a deeper knowledge of life gained from his own varied and sometimes rhetoric experience. Now, as you see here, if I want to talk about Henry Feldings, I can say that Henry Feldings was an English novelist, as you know, and also dramatist, not only novelist, but also dramatist, known for his earthly humor and satires. We consider Henry Felding as a humor or his humors and satires which appeared during his novels. His comic novel, Tom Jones, Tom Jones is one of the masterpieces of his novel. Now is also I can say still widely appreciated, and he and Samuel Richardson are seen as founders of the traditional English novels. Keep it in mind again, Henry Felding and Richardson, we can see or seen as a founders of the traditional English novel. The English author and magistrate Henry Felding was one of the great novelists of the 18th century. We consider Henry Felding as the great or greatest novelist of the 18th century. His fiction also plays essays and legal pamphlets show how he was a human or a witty man and also with a patience for reform and justice. So in English here, novel, we consider him as one of the important novelists. Look about the Felding's work. Felding's first novel, Joseph Andrew, which started in 1742, was inspired by the success of Pamela. After Pamela Richardson, Henry Felding introduced Joseph Andrew as the novel and began to appraise of the felt sentimentality and also he conventional virtue of Richardson heroines. We can also say that he took for his hero the legend of brothers of Pamela as one of the main characters in the novel of Joseph Andrew. Pamela, who was exposed to the same kinds of temptations, but who instead of being rewarded for his virtue was unceremoniously turned out of doors by his mistress. There, the perilous end, and the hero takes the open road, and Fielding forgets all about Pamela in telling the adventures of Joseph and his companions. So Parson Adam as the co-hero of the novel. Joseph Andrew is the hero, and Parson Adam is the co-hero, all right, of Joseph Andrew. Now, the novel of Joseph Andrew. Unlike Richardson, who has no humor, who minces words and moralize and dotes on the sentimental world of his heroines, Feldings is direct, vigorous, hilarious, and coarse to the point of vulgarity. So, this is a brief summary about the novel Joseph Andrew, which you have to search for it and look at the characters and read the summary of Joseph Andrew in order to understand it as the first novel bring by Henry Feldings. So also I can see here that the English novel of today was largely created by Henry Felding and Samuel Richardson. Richardson's work, written in the form of a series of letters, are experiment also of psychological analysis. But Fielding's novel, on the other hand, we can see that the author himself tells the story and controls the plot structures, are also considered the first accurate portrayal of contemporary manners. So this is the differences between Richardson works and Henry Fielding's work or novel. Again, I can repeat that Richardson works written in the form of a series of letters and also experiments in psychological analysis. His style is psychological, but Henry Fielding's novels, the authors himself tells the story. There is no letters, I mean here, and also the authors controlled the plot structures and consider the first accurate portrait of contemporary manners. This is the difference between Richardson and Henry Fielding's style or novel. Now, let us talk about the summary of the 18th century. The summary of the 18th century, as you see, the literatures of the century is remarkable complex, but we may classify it all under three general heads of the reign of so-called classicism, the revival of romantic poetry, and third, the beginning of the modern novel. So we have three general heads here to summarize these chapters. The first is the reign of so-called classicism. The second is the revival of romantic poetry, and the third, the beginning of the modern novel. The first half of the century, especially, is an age of prose, owing largely to the fact that the practice and social interest of the age demanded expressions. Now, in our study here, we have noted the first, in this chapter, the Augustans or a classic age, the meaning of classicism, and the life and work of Alexander Pope. We covered also the egretist poets of the age. So this is number one, the first sections of this chapters, number 9, as you see, is the Augustan or a classical age, the meaning of classicism, the life of work Alexander Pope, and finally the greatest poets of the age. The second things also in this chapter, the revival of romantic poetry, the meaning of romanticism, and also the life and work of William Blake as the mystic. The third, or finally, the first English novelists, which we cover today, the meaning and history of the modern novel, and also the life and work of the pioneers like the novelists, the novels of Richardson and Henry Felding, Joseph Andrew by Henry Felding, and Pamela by Richardson. Richardson introduced the first English novel, which called Pamela, and Henry Feldings make quotations by Joseph Andrew, and he changed the main or the style or the structures of this novel, Pamela, and he changed it to be Joseph Andrew and added the characters, styles, structures, points of view, and other. So this is everything about this chapter, chapter number 9. I hope that you understand it and revise it more and more. I'll send you also a questions before I leave. I'll send you a questions about this chapters in order to help you to answer or to study for exam. So read it more and more. Study William Blake and the work of William Blake. You have to study also the first English novelists, and you have to study or define the novel. What is novel? Also, the first English novels, we have Henry Feldings in 18th century. What he over or introduced in this century, Henry Feldings. Read also Joseph Andrew by Henry Feldings. You have to read these novels, okay? Then also Pamela Richardson. What is the difference between Richardson and Henry Felding's style? Here, Pamela and Joseph Andrew. Pamela as novels written by Richardson, and Joseph Andrew by Henry Felding. What is the difference between Pamela Richardson and Joseph Andrew? You can also find these questions also or answers. Search for internet. So this is everything about uh, this chapter today. Until I meet you next lecture, let me say goodbye and see you.